as we've very well established on this podcast, you're a younger entrepreneur than I am.
Say it one more time, just in case people miss it.
You're a child. Anyway, what do you want to talk about today?
Little relationship and entrepreneurship.
Ooh. All right, so we're going out of tactical business topics. I'm into it.
I don't know. I feel like we have covered a good bit of conversations just from knowing each other and on this podcast. There are 400 tactical parts of entrepreneurship, and it's the stuff everybody talks about. And then there's all these interpersonal components that I think exist with everybody: money, relationship, happiness, mental health, that people shy away from talking about. So I thought it could be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a huge topic. We may have to probably break this up. But yeah, I mean, if you want to start maybe with like family,
yeah,
I think that's probably a good one. On my side, I think the relationship with family, I think, is probably a good place to start, because I think it's probably the one that gets hit the most. I mean, like, these are the people that have loved you probably the longest, hopefully.
Yeah,
hopefully. And it does take a huge toll. But I mean, like, for you, you're, as we've very well established on this podcast, you're a younger entrepreneur than I am.
One more time, just in case people miss it.
You're a child. As far as I'm concerned. No, you're single, you're kind of doing your thing, you're all in on your business. So I guess on your end, right, the family aspect for you is really just like your parents.
Yep.
Because you don't really have any siblings, I don't think, unless you popped one into the picture and I didn't know about it.
No sibs.
No one was adopted, unfortunately, into the Harrison camp.
Nope.
So it's got to be your parents that are so super focused, especially as an only child. I feel like that's got to be really intense. What was it like for you when you were like, hey, mom, dad, I'm quitting my job and I'm not getting another one. I'm building another one.
Great question. I think my parents are a little used to this right now. For folks that don't know, I dropped out of college with like a class left in college because I was miserable. Wasn't having a good time. I just shut down my first company. Candidly, I would say that was like when my mental health around this was probably the worst. And I got an opportunity to move to Philadelphia and join a sales team at a startup, and thought, you know what, like, I could always come back and finish this class. I really feel like I got to do something different. And I took that. I remember being in the car. I was living at home and I did this. It was during the pandemic, so it wasn't living on campus, and told my mom and dad, hey, I'm going to move to Philadelphia. I'm going to not finish school. And they like weren't as upset as I thought they would be. Decently supportive, curious, I think wanted to know what my plan was, but I'm sure they caught the same vibes that I wasn't happy. So that was really cool of them. And then, I mean, like, yeah, helped me move out to Philly. So when I texted them out of the blue and was like, hey, I quit my job, I'm going to go all in on this thing, I think they were both immediately like, oh, that's super cool. Like, they knew that was what I wanted. Same type of question. So like, how are you going to pay yourself? Are you okay? Those conversations still exist every time I speak to them, which is, I don't know if it'll ever go away. Maybe one day. But yeah, they've thankfully always been very supportive.
One, amazing. Love that for you. Not everyone has that. And that's really awesome that you did. But when you quit school with a class left, like, how did that part go?
I think it was a lot of curiosity. It was a lot of, does this job require a college degree? Do you have intentions to need a job after this job that's going to require a college degree? Do you feel like you're not learning? Are you on track to graduate anyway? It just opened, in true Discovery Call pod fashion, it opened up a list of Discovery armed questions.
Interesting. Did you ever end up finishing that class and getting your degree?
Nope.
You're degreeless right now?
I'm degreeless. I have an associate's
I'm on a
degree.
podcast with a degreeless goon.
I know. I know. What about you? Were your parents supportive of this?
I think they were cautiously encouraging, because I did the whole thing. I went through the path. I went to the same college that my dad did. I had a great time. I had a really good job lined up in Manhattan, went and did that, but I was not happy with what I was doing. I didn't like the way that the organization was run and the way that it was getting run in like my sphere. I had like started this blog thing and I started making money on the side doing this men's fashion blog thing. And after like my first $400 check cleared from the blog, I was like, I'm good. I'm out. Not knowing like, oh, you actually only get like some of that $400 and now you don't have healthcare, and now you don't have all this stuff. And I had like a little bit saved, but by a little bit, I mean like actually a little bit. I had a 401k that was like not mature and all this stuff. So it was like completely financially irresponsible to do it. Now I run a company where like, and again, we're really small. I would burn through that in a month, right? And that's what I had to live on for until something worked. Specifically, I think my dad was extremely worried. He worked for like 2 companies his whole career, and he was very good at what he did, and he was a company guy. Like, he's like, you go to college, you get a really good job at a good company, and they take care of you, and you work for them, and you work your butt off because they're going to take care of you. And I just was like, oh, okay. And I went to my first job. I'm like, they're not taking care of me, and I'm working my butt off. Something's broken. I'm going to build a company that does take care of people, I think, or at least try to. Or like, I know this just isn't for me anymore. I want to go do something different because I don't like the way that people are managing other people in this. And I could have gone to a different job for sure. But like, I wanted to give it a go because I was like, I'm going to regret if I don't try. And I told them that, and they're like, well, you know, we'll support you. Like, try to figure it out. And, you know, they did throw me a bone every now and then when I was like, hey, I can't eat this month. Can I borrow like $200? Like, I've had to have that conversation a couple times because like things don't happen out of nowhere. And I knew nothing. I knew nothing about what I didn't know. I didn't know anything about the things I did know. Like, my level of education on running a business was literally zero, other than I probably need an email address and I already have a website. And that was it.
The most fascinating part about what you just said to me is there is such a difference, I think, in our generation and our parents' generation. There's such a difference in the attitude of if it's normal to hate your job or not.
Yeah.
I think we look at that problem and say, this isn't, you know, a knock to anyone's parents or our parents, but like, I don't want to be 55 and can't wait to retire. Like, I want to be 27 and can't wait to go to work because I like it so much. And I just don't want to live in a way that makes me comfortable but unsatisfied for something I'm going to spend all day, every day doing for the rest of my life. Like, I just don't think I don't think it was ever normal. I certainly think people our age are starting to see that a little bit more, though.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I also think that the contract between a business and an employee has changed so much over time, and it's become less, you take care of us, we take care of you. And it's become more exploitive. Like, I will pay you, and you will do exactly as I say it, when I say it, for as long as I say it. And you have to be happy with that. No wonder why people don't like their jobs anymore, right? Like,
Yep.
Everyone's getting more demanding. The higher you are up in a company, like, the more you want and the more you will take out of the business. It's just like, and I'm going to go on a small tangent. I apologize in advance, but I was talking to somebody. I was in Denmark last week on vacation. It was awesome. But I was talking to a Dane, and they were like, yeah, there's a lot of CEOs in Denmark that will like cap their own salary at like $1 million too, because they know that you can't really spend more than that ever.
Interesting.
You don't need to get paid $10 million a year, $20 million a year, $25 million a year running really large companies. They cap their salary so they can push that salary down into their ranks so that everyone can live a better life.
I mean, that's huge.
What an incredible idea. And I'm like, no wonder why everyone loves what they do over there. Like, they have very strong work-life balance policies. Everyone has what they need. The people that grind, they exist. I met some of them, right? But they're not unhappy with what they have, right? Whereas everyone here is like, well, I don't have enough. I don't have enough. I don't have enough. I don't have enough. Enough exists over there, and the example is set at the top. That's really interesting. So to me, I think, and I know this isn't on the topic of family at all, but it's just one of those where I just think the relationship for a business and an employee is different. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to start my own company and manage other people, is to set a good example.
Yeah.
To really like not just take care of myself, but take care of others. And I think as I explained that also to like my parents, of like, I would like to build a different culture. And that's part of why I want to start a business. And I want to do something that's fun and interesting. And while I started in men's fashion consulting, and they were like, that's kind of crazy. And then I moved to a more traditional business model that exists as marketing. You know, I could just scale this faster, right? It's a proven model. It gave them some stability in the thought that I like am out here on my own flailing. And then eventually I made enough so I could buy health care. And then they were like kind of off my back for the most part. They're like, what happens if you get hurt? I'm like, I'm not going anywhere other than my apartment because I'm just sitting here working.
Yeah, I've had the same conversation like 11
It's
times.
crazy.
I think too, most families, I think even we probably both know founders who families are maybe much less supportive. I think everyone generally wants to help but doesn't know how. And I think my challenge with this is every time I go home and that type of conversation comes up, yeah, I'm humble enough to admit I need help running a company and there are certain things I need help with. I don't know like what role my family would be able to play in that help, and I certainly don't know how to have that conversation. I end up just like telling them everything's fine, even if it wasn't that week, right? Because how deep do you want to dig into something that someone doesn't fully understand? And it's tough.
Yeah, no, totally. I eventually actually ended up giving QuickBooks access to my dad because he was an accountant by trade. He wasn't one in his last job, but he graduated with an accounting degree. And I'm like, dude, you understand this more than I do. This is where I need help. You have a skill set that you haven't used probably in years. I don't need you to do my taxes, but like the public standards of accounting have not changed since you graduated, really. Can you help me do this? And I think when I did that, it gave him a peek behind the curtain and also felt like he was at least a little bit in control or could ask me good questions versus just, how's it going? He'd be like, oh, you're actually like growing the business. There's more clients. You're selling more things, all that kind of fun stuff. So I was very unique in that I actually had a parent that had some of the skill set that I actually could use, which was really also super helpful. Like, it's not like he was, in my books every day, but we would do like a monthly thing where I'm like, how are things going, do you think? And he's like, well, I mean, I don't have anything to go off of, but you're in black, so that's cool. I was like,
Yeah.
sick.
Yeah, thanks, Dad. That's great. That is cool. It's pretty great level of reassurance to give your parent access to that. I mean, it's quite literally the telltale all of here's how much money I actually have and how much I don't.
Yeah. So on your side, though, now that you're past like the family thing, the next thing on the family list is building your own, right? So you're out there hanging out in the social crowd. I'm assuming, I don't know if you're on apps or whatnot, but like,
I can't wait to see how you ask this question.
how's the dating life going? We're just gonna hit the wall head on, or like, how is this affecting what you're looking for, if you're even looking at all?
Good questions. As I started this business, I was in a relationship and spending the same amount of money that I would spend when I had a job, like a weekly like date or dinner, and like it is expensive. It is so expensive to do that in a city, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I like really can't afford this, even though that I technically have the money in my bank. I know I haven't figured this company thing out yet. So it's not like I'm making $10K a month at the time or anything, and it just creates this uneasy pressure too. And I don't know if this is like just a guy thing or whatnot. I don't want to super appear unstable, weak, financially weak, any of that stuff. So even as I like moving to Milwaukee, even thinking about, do I like want to go out and try to do this before a certain period? And I think I spent 8 months just being like, I need to figure out myself before I need to get myself financially okay. I need to not have credit card debt. I do not know anybody else money before I go out and try to build my life up in this way. Now I've finally gotten to a point I feel pretty confident when I leave work. I don't look at my like account every second of every day. I'm not worried about how I'm going to pay rent. I have a team now. So I feel a little bit more comfortable to go out and do stuff like that. But it is tricky-ish. I don't know if you and Sarah were together pre-starting your company, but I think it's a bit tricky to bring up in a sense, mostly because people don't understand. You say I'm an entrepreneur to people, they either think you're rich or poor. I think there's no in between. Like, people really don't get it, It's
so true. Unless you're like, yeah, I own a plumbing business. You're like, okay, are you really rich, or are you just like kind of killing it? Like, that's
right.
That's the closest you can get.
Right. I think you tell a lot of people, oh, I'm a founder. It's like, okay, are you unemployed or like a tech startup, or like, what does that actually mean? Some people don't even know what that means. Like,
I mean, like when I was on the dating apps before my wife and I met, I'd started my first business. It was on its way up. It was kind of going through its thing, but like I dated a few other people while I was doing that, and it did put a lot of stress on that because they didn't really understand what it meant to start a business. They were like, I thought you were going to be basically, like, they didn't say this out loud, but a lot of like the conversations that ended up happening were like, I thought you were going to be rich by now. I'm like, I started this thing a year ago, and it's a men's fashion consulting business. Like, the amount of money we would have to charge and the amount of clients we would have to have, like, I wouldn't have time for you at all if this was going super well. So like, which one do you want? And so like, I had my business when I met Sarah. The pandemic happened like month 2 of us dating, it collapsed that business. And that was in March. So like by the end of March, it was dead. And then by April 15th, I decided to build up and create my current marketing agency. The good part was we couldn't go anywhere or do anything. So like I wasn't spending a lot of money on us going out, like doing crazy things. Everything was closed, which was actually a godsend because I was like, hey, you cool with staying on the couch again?
I love homemade sandwiches. I just love them. Store bought. I love them.
We can't go out. But also I'm the one that wants to. Like I have this big thing of like being out in public space. Like I love being social. She loves the couch. So it was great for her in both aspects, and that has not changed.
Yeah.
And I'm the one who struggles with it internally. But the really good thing about, the history with my wife is that she worked for a company that like taught entrepreneurs how to build an online like CPG business, was like what she had just been doing for a very long time. She knows something else. But when we met, that's like kind of like she was a content writer and marketer for this like global company that is all about entrepreneurship. And she's like, I get what you do. I work with them. I work for 2 founders, and I'm talking to entrepreneurs and entrepreneur like wannabes or people that are in that mode of like kind of turning the engine on all of the time. So like this doesn't scare me very much, and it still hasn't scared her. Like we had a conversation once and she's like, I thought this is just like what we got. Like you're going to do fine and you're doing better and that's great, but like, we'll get there. I don't expect that to be like tomorrow because I've seen what it takes to get there. And I was like, sick. Like you can't ask for much more than that. At the same time, now we're in a space where it's like, okay, I would like to go on more trips, and I don't want it to be like, we don't need to ball out, but I also don't want to go like pack sandwiches
I think
while we're touring around like Europe.
One of the important things you said there is just an understanding of how long this takes to get stable, how long it takes to get right. Once you get it right, it takes another 3 years, right? So people don't factor in how much you're going to fall on your face in these first few years. I've found the more I have talked to people, dating setting or non-dating setting, that don't understand this, the more just honest you could be. Do I want to build a $10 million company? Sure. Do I think I could? Yes. Is there great odds I don't? Absolutely. Am I there yet? Absolutely not. Like just telling people, I think, how I don't have a normal life and I didn't want a normal life. And here's what that means for me. And here's what it would mean for us should like you go on this path with me. Some people are into that. Some people are not, of course. So I think helping them understand it as clearly as you can. You know this, being married, like you're going to spend a ton of time with this person. You're going to put a lot of trust on this person. Probably rely financially on this person sometimes. So just being able to have that, I wouldn't want to know that in year 2 or year 1 or I wouldn't want it to be a surprise to me.
No, I mean, you do have to kind of lay it all out. And like, thankfully for her, I didn't have to spell it out for her because she already knew a lot of the implications. But when I was like actively dating before her, right, it's like, hey, I'm a founder, I'm building a business, I own a company. And she's like, and there were multiple people that are like, oh, you want to run a company? Like, what is it? Because it seemed like at the time that like every kind of like 2 white dudes with a podcast, right? Like every guy had like a company that they were working on, or like they're going to be a startup founder and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, I'm legit doing it. Like I'm not kind of working on the side. Like it's not that I couldn't get a job and I had to do this instead. Like I gave up 6 figures to chase something. And I think that I'm smart enough. And a lot of that fell on like deaf ears.
That's when they think you're insane.
Yeah. Or they're like, oh, I'm not getting free meals out of this gig. I'm out.
Yeah. Yeah. It is hard to happen, but it's hard to find a person that hears that and is like, sweet. I want to attach myself to that.
Yeah. It sounds like a roller coaster ride. I'm in.
Yeah. It's scary. I think part of like how I'm thinking about this is trying to learn from other people too. Mm-hmm. I don't have kids. I'm not married, all that stuff. So looking at people that have ran companies and figured this out successfully, I'm trying to at least take inspiration of as I get to that point in my life. So naturally, I have some cool people to share that I think at least seem pretty vocal about this whole relationship with themselves and their family and online, which is hard to do. So kudos. I don't even do it, I think, enough. So yeah, have a few people like different angles. So 2 of them, I'm going to pull up their LinkedIn profiles for. One of them is so traditional is the word I'm going to go. no LinkedIn profile, so I'm just going to talk about him.
Okay.
Let me give you a few. I don't know if you've maybe met this woman in person.
I have met this woman in person. She is awesome.
For those that are just listening, Zoya Lehrer, she's the founder of a software company called Orgo. They are a logistics platform specifically for sports families. So Zoya will say, look, Google Calendar doesn't really work if you're a parent because you put in, for example, my kid has to be at soccer practice at 6:30. Never driven kids to soccer practice, but I'm sure most parents can understand. It does not mean you start thinking about it at 6:30. Zoya talks about there's all this stuff that goes into factoring that. Is their bag packed the right way? What field do you get them to? Are you available to drive them or not? Do they need anything? She's like, when you have multiple kids that are in multiple sports and a very active family, that is amplified times 10 across multiple kids. And it just makes it very hard to manage like the logistics of your daily life. She calls it time literacy, I believe. And her whole brand is built around being a mom. She's like, look, I understand this problem because I live it. I have 3 active young ones at home that all play sports and all depend on me to get them to the right places to the right time. And I can't miss. And I have to be on my ball all the time about this. But I think she's just very vocal about, one, obviously she wouldn't have this idea if she didn't have kids, if she didn't care about her family. 2, I don't know exactly what her distribution strategy of the product is. I certainly don't think the story is as relatable if she's not vocal about how much she loves her family and cares about doing this for them. So I thought she was like a just cool build in public example of you don't need to hide away how your life actually looks. I've been on Zoom calls with her before, seen her videos. Her kids run up to the camera all the time. She doesn't apologize for it.
That's what I was about to say. Like the few times that I've seen her, not like I've met her once in person. I've been on a few Zoom calls with her, and at some point, one of her kids is like standing next to her, and she doesn't like push them off. She just like lets them stand there and watch. And I'm like, is this big brother? She's like, no, it's little sister. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. No, but she does a really great job of like including a lot of like the tangential things around the actual activities in what she produces in terms of like the photos that she takes and all that stuff. And she's very honest about how difficult being an entrepreneur and being a mom at the same time is as well, which I think is really important. Like she picked the hardest way to have a career at a time where it's also like the most important and hard job that you're ever going to have is to like raise a human being that's not an asshole. And you have to do that multiple times. I give her huge props. She's also a really fun to talk to. She's very like no bullshit. And I think she has to be in order to get like her whole thing across. But I was hoping you would pick her actually as we were talking about this. And you're like, I think I have some people that we could talk to, like, or at least talk about. I was like, I bet Zoya is going to be one of them because she's like power mom of the year, basically.
One thing I would be fascinated to ask her if I could is just when I made this decision to take the leap, I do think a big factor in me being okay with it is if it doesn't work out, I am quite literally the only person that is affected. It's just me. And she has 3 kids, and every parent I've talked to in like my own business or just meeting other entrepreneurs, like I would do anything for my kids. And she left a huge career in banking that I'm confident she made great money at, probably more than she does now. How did this conversation go with your husband? Was he all in on this? How do you assure someone like that like this is going to be okay? Like, what's your backup plan? Do you have one?
Is it time boxed? Like you're giving yourself this amount of years, and then if it doesn't work, then like fine. I feel like that's a big bargain tool that people use with their families. Like, hey, I'm going to do this until then. And if this doesn't work by then like, maybe we'll try something else. I hear that a lot. It's a tough way to do it, but it's also great to light a fire under your butt, right? To make sure that like you're doing everything you can to get it done.
100%. The second person I wanted to share, very different vibe. His name is Jordan Winston.
2 first names. Gotta love it.
I know. So yeah, Jordan Winston, he lives in, just moved to New York, like recently met him. He's only been doing his company like 9 months, and it's a company called Not Your Dad's Media. They make LinkedIn content for founders. And I'm like, what's the differentiator? He's like, it's LinkedIn content that doesn't suck. That's it. Like, do you like content that's good? He's like, have you seen content on LinkedIn that sucks? I'm like, yeah. He's like, wasn't us.
All over the place.
He's 25 though, spent like his career thus far in sales, like account exec, worked his way up. I think he started as an SDR. Didn't work out. I think he was at this like, is it either like a tech company or like a growing startup, something like that. He probably has somewhat of a similar journey to us in the sense of like, he goes, look, like I don't have a lot of obligations. I have me to worry about. He lived in San Diego. Like, he wanted to move to New York, and it's fascinating to hear him kind of talk about or even see in these posts. Now we make okay money. He's got his company to like pretty stable point. I think they have like good MRR, monthly recurring revenue. When he started, he's like, dude, my rent was $1,000 and I'm like bartending and teaching surf lessons and trying to get clients and thinking like, should I drive a car around? And now I moved to New York and it's okay. But he's like, I couldn't have done that 9 months ago. I couldn't even have fathomed how I was going to pay my rent in that way. I'd be interested to know from somebody like this too, if us having a pretty easy time with our parents, or I would be interested to know if it's like abnormal, or if somebody else's parents would freak out and not be supportive and say, go deal with it, good luck.
Yeah. I also like that the juxtaposition of like, this is content for basically like millennials and lower on LinkedIn, whereas like traditionally it's been like the boomer social media, or like Gen X, essentially. The fact that he's 25, I think, is really interesting too. To move from San Diego to New York is a huge culture change as well. Not only, I mean, they're not like the same in rent, but they're not far off. Like, it's really expensive to live in San Diego because it's so chill and beautiful and like clean. And New York is very expensive, and it is none of those things. And to build a business while you're also going through that change, I think, is really interesting. But also, again, the fact that he's hustling as hard as he was to get it off the ground. I wonder if, you know, his family ties, like his dad, right, got him to Not Your Dad's Media, because his dad's like, what is this? This isn't LinkedIn content. You know?
I don't know where the name came from.
I mean, I get it, right? It's a great name. This is a good, I like this find. I want to read some of his stuff.
A question I would have as a parent, I feel like, to someone our age is this like a 3-year get rich thing? Is this what you want to do for the rest of your life? If you want to go get a job after this, do you still need the college degree? Is what you did enough? Like, what is your plan there? I'd be curious for somebody like him if he's thought about that. I know he said his agency, when we met and talked, he's like, look, I think this is a 5 to 10 year thing. Cool. Like, you're 35. Most people will work for 30 years past that, 25 years past that, you know? So yeah. I'd be curious to ask him, have you had that conversation with your family? Like, what comes next, whether this works out or not?
Yeah, that'd be really interesting. Can you scroll down, though? I'm interested in what he went to school for.
Yeah.
I know he went to Colorado State, but let's look.
Applied science.
What?
That threw you for a loop, huh?
Yeah, that's not what I was expecting. Organizational leadership, okay. You know, it's kind of entrepreneurial in general, but like applied science, that's interesting. Oh, he was a founder before this too. He's like a 3-time founder.
I think this is a podcast, so he's really a 2-time founder.
Oh.
Not that long before, so he's been doing this like 3 months. This company, like a little less than a year, it looks like. It's a maintenance company for property management. Like, that maybe gave him some cash or confidence that he could do this.
Yeah, he was just cleaning buildings to fill his time, basically at night while he was working on something during the day, or just so he could surf. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah. Relatable, though. I mean, I taught surf lessons just because I needed to scrounge together $1,000 to pay my rent.
Absolutely, dude. I used to like go to like alcohol events and be the Philly Scotch guy that would teach you about Scotch at a bar on behalf of like the larger brands like Oban and Lagavulin, and be like, notice this. And they would pay me to go do that. Like,
I'm about to pay you to go do that.
Hey, anytime, pal. I know way more than I should at this point. But whatever you got to do, right? But I did it because it was on like nights and weekends. So I had the rest of my day to work on like my business. So I get it.
So the third one I want to talk about is a little bit different. So my best friend ever, his name's Michael Kipp, is my business partner. He's my business partner in my current business. We were business partners in our first business. And when we shut down our first business, I've told you it affected us very differently. It gave me a chip on my shoulder, taught me I like had to go out and prove something. It taught him maybe I'm like not cut out for this. Maybe we aren't cut out for this. I don't know that I want to do this forever. His dad is an entrepreneur. His dad's name's Brian. His dad's ran a plumbing company for like more than 20 years in central Indiana. Not huge, but like 7-figure plumbing company. It is fascinating to sit down and talk to this guy. One, he's old, right? He's very old, but he's been doing this for a long time. I talk to people our age and they all mostly say the same shit. Like, I want to build a huge company. I want to be really profitable. I want to make great money on this. You talk to guys in this era, that was never a thing. Like exiting your company for $10 million. Like, no one did that that was not normal. And it's
Billion-dollar
still,
companies were novel.
yeah.
So it makes sense.
I was like, oh, why did you do this? He's like, I was good at plumbing and hated working for somebody. Like, what do you mean? And it just, it's like, did you make good money on this? He's like, no. Like, what? No. What are you talking about? No, the first like few years. And it's interesting now to talk to like my business partner, Michael, because I talk to founders all day and I'm like, you got to be in the headspace of these people to like really understand them. They're constantly, when they're successful, they're constantly anxious. There's this level of stress, this level of uncertainty, and he doesn't always understand that because he doesn't talk to a founder as maybe frequently as I do. I talked to his dad, and his dad's like, dude, I did not know how I was going to figure this out every single day the first 2 or 3 years. Every day I went home and was like, this might run out of money tomorrow. And I'm like, how did you get through that? And he's like, you just like, what is the alternative? I go get a job. I like tell my wife I'm giving up. Like, I'm not doing that. I said I was going to set out to do this thing. And it's, I don't know, it's just fascinating to me. He's been doing this 20 years. He's like trying to retire and I think sell off some of the client base of his business. Objectively, like very successful, has good money from the company, not like $10 million exit money. But every time I talk, you get this like nugget of wisdom about like what it really takes to run a business, what it doesn't take to run a business. For example, I tell him I work out of an office. He's like, why? You can work from home. I had to go into the office every day. It sucked. I had to climb under people's sinks and shit. Like, you can work from your couch. Like, I envy that. And I'm like, no, I hate it. It sucks. He's like, what? You're insane. Like,
he's got a point, right? Like, what do you need, right? At a base level. I mean, but that's also coming from such a place of, scarcity, right? Scarcity mindset would be like, well, I don't need all this stuff. Do I want it? Yes. We both work from an office. I need it so that I can get out of my house and like shift my brain so that I can actually have a little bit of like balance in my life. And I know that, or like, so I don't get distracted. Like, I'm way more productive outside. But like for him, right, that's so cool that he was able to build all that. But I also understand his point of, you have so much more opportunity without having to move and do things and be somewhere in order to make money. Like, we could be anywhere and do this job. You could be in Thailand spending a third of what you're spending on everything else and still run this. Now, will it be harder mentally? Yes. But physically, you could do it, right? Again, it sounds like he had a family or at least a wife at the time when he built it, right? Before your buddy came along. Like, that's crazy. But also, I totally understand his mentality. Like, no, I'm gonna do this, man. I'm going to get good at it and I'm going to do it. Like, that's such vindication, but I would be also like, have you talked to your buddy's mom about that time at all?
a little bit. She just seemed very supportive. It sounds like was doing like in helping with whatever he needed. But I talked to him like at this guy's wedding like a year and a half ago, and it was fascinating because I think they had kids after he was in this, and he's like, look, dude, the first 5 years I barely made money. Like, I literally barely, if at all, made money. Like, just didn't happen. And I got like just enough to scrape by, and he had kids on that, and like around the same age, like a couple kids. And I was like, wow, that's like hard. And he told me, look, I decided I wanted to have kids. So like, I wanted to be a good dad. I also decided I wanted to do this thing. Like, I told everybody I wasn't going to give up on them. He's like, my kids didn't make the decision for me to go be broke and run a company. I did. So I have to figure it out. It's not their fault. Like, I got to be able to buy stuff for them, provide for them, all these things. I asked him if it changed anything, and he was basically like, I wasn't going to give up before, but I really took out whatever safety net I had in my own mind after that. Like, it just all in. There's no world where I don't make this work. He's like, in the same way that people will push themselves as their back against the wall, if you feel like you have something to lose and it's like personal, it's your kids, like, you will push yourself in ways that you don't realize you maybe can.
It's really cool to hear, though, because as someone who's like, yeah, I want a family too, and I'm not where I need to be yet in my mind, but also I'm not sure that I can wait much longer from like a biological perspective so that we're not, 75 and we have a kid in college, right? Like, that's not what we want either.
Which is like next year for you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just fair play.
I was curious how that related or resonated to you as someone who, look, like, I don't know if you'd ever feel financially ready. Does that like scare you at all? Does it excite you? Does it motivate you?
It's motivating, but I think it's motivating because it's terrifying. It's really expensive to have a kid in the US. Like there is not a lot of social support there. Even though like we have a really good family support system, which would save us a ton of money and be really great, it's still really scary. And I always had like a number in mind that I would like to be making out of the business, not necessarily business valuation, but what I make before I would feel comfortable enough to kind of start that process. But at the same time, you know, it's one of those where like, all right, if we end up like getting pregnant, I got 9 months to get there. That's my timeline, right? Like,
Do you do well under pressure?
um, my anxiety goes through the roof, but I work my way out of it every time. Almost every time. I will work very hard to make sure that the bad outcomes do not happen. Realizations come to light, but like when it's like, hey, you have to get this done, or like this has to like change or shift or grow or whatever, almost always I've figured out a way to do it. So when that happens, right? Because you know, one of my life goals is to be a dad, so like that's got to happen for me, and it's part of like, you know, what I would deem as successful. It's not just money, but like also being a good dad. That's what's putting me on my path right now of like, okay, to our earlier podcast points, like I got to start outbound sales and I have to figure out this process because we are not growing fast enough for me to get this as quickly as I need it. We will hire the people that we need. I will train them as much as I have to, but that all doesn't matter if I don't increase top line revenue. And like that needs to go faster. Because if I'm going to get there for me and everyone else I'm bringing along, right? It's not just how do I increase so I can pay myself 80 grand. I shove everything back into the business so I can pay everyone else. And that's still going to be the case. So everyone else has to come with me. So it's not just, hey, how do we make an extra couple $1,000s? It's how do we make a lot more so that I can responsibly pay myself that much and make sure everyone else is taken care of in my business.
One thing that'll be cool for you, I have observed a lot of people that I think are mediocre at best managers / people leaders become a dad or a mom and become great people leaders very fast, like in a year and a half. You're already an amazing people leader and very empathetic and a good listener. I will be curious to see how, if at all, like being a father changes.
No, I'm also interested, to be honest with you, because I like to think that I have a lot of patience already. And that's what I think where a lot of my like leadership skill comes from, is just sitting and being patient, but then also perceiving from other people's point of view. I think it's just a skill that not a lot of people have innately.
Yeah.
That's also why I think I would like to be a dad, because I think I can be a good one.
What do you think is the number one skill a parent has to also have to be an entrepreneur?
Good prioritization. You have to know what's most important, and like family's going to hit that list in a different way once you become a parent. And I don't think I know what the answer or balance is, right? But the people that can juggle both and prioritize both where neither feels neglected, I think has to be a true skill that I don't think a lot of people get right away, but have to learn how to get right.
I love that.
You got to spin both plates. Like neither can drop. They're both your kids, basically. You built one with your bare hands and you made one organically, right? Like both are very precious. And in your own image.
And then one more. Out of all three of these people, if you could ask any of them like one universal question, what would it be?
Well, I guess for the two that are parents, because that's kind of where my head's at right now, is what was the big mistake that you made early that you wish you knew about before? Or like, what didn't you see coming? I can project and try to guess and all that stuff. But like, what didn't you see coming that actually hit really hard for you that made it more challenging than you expected? I think that would probably be the one big question I would ask.
I have good news. Since I have convinced another person to join us on this journey and talk, you are going to have the chance to ask that exact question to one of these awesome folks. So I told you I had somebody cool. This is Zoya Lehrer, which I know you met her before. Awesome entrepreneur, awesome story, runs a super cool company called Orgo that, you know we chatted through. So I wanted to bring her on here, repping the merch. I wanted to bring her on and ask her some of these questions that we had about family life and impacts as it relates to entrepreneurship.
Thank you for joining, Zoya. This is really exciting. To get us kind of kicked off, though, can you give us a bit of an overview on Orgo? Like we had the outsider view and synopsis of basically what you do, but I would love to hear it from the mouth of the founder.
No, thanks so much for having me. This is so much fun. So, Eric, you and I have been kind of on this journey paralleling one another for the last at least 18 months, if not more so. So, it's kind of like this little freshman class that I always say is starting to move up, and my oldest actually started high school today. So, it's very apropos to even make that comment. But we'll come full circle to that in just a moment. But Orgo stands for Organization on the Go, and it is a scheduling platform specifically aimed towards sports families like my own. I've got 3 athletes, 3 girls, ages 14, 10, and 7. And so they do all the things. We swim year-round, club soccer, club lacrosse, field hockey, track, dance, you name it, we do it. And I'm not different. I'm not unique. My family doesn't do anything more than pretty much most this day and age. And so this norm and this complexity that we lead in the day-to-day is what kind of prompted the opportunity. Well, firstly, the problem set itself, but also the opportunity to go after it and solve it at scale. So
Sweet.
Wild.
there's more details there, but I'd like to weave them in and out contextually because the pain is really specific to some of these moments that I'm sure we can get into with a bit more color. So I'll hold off until then.
Super timely that your daughter started high school today too. That's wild.
Big, and I'm so excited. I'm a really cool mom. Like not a regular mom. I'm a cool mom.
You spent most of your career in banking, right?
Yeah, so 20 years, financial services and banking, but always within a tech capacity. So that's kind of the common thread, jumping from one, corporate seat over to the founder seat now. But the common thread is definitely tech. And so my degree is in computer science and information technology. Graduated from Rutgers, so very much always a Northeast girl within which there's no shortage of banks and financial institutions and SaaS companies to work for, and that's kind of the path that I've taken. I didn't really have to ask the question for too long in terms of what was next because the very problem that I wanted to go after asserted itself from my own home. And so that's a little bit more of kind of coming back around to the original question of what is Orgo and why we're here. But it stemmed from the personal kind of side of things and the pain that we started to experience within my family is that one of 2 dual working parents, which again is very commonplace, and the 3 kids. Here we are outnumbered and overscheduled. And so the complexity of life, as I like to say that we were leading, was mismatched to the tooling that we had at home. We've got our Google Calendars and maps and comms and texts and threads and all these other things. And of course, countless team management apps screaming at us all day. But I didn't have an aggregate view, like an enterprise, data-centric, not human in the center of the story kind of view of it all. And I was like, but why? Like we do that elsewhere. We figured this all out in much more complex scenarios. Like why can't that apply within my own household? So I went out there, didn't really see a solution that was, kind of matching the problem set that I experienced. And so the vision for Orgo was born, which twofold is based on the aggregate aspect to it where we bring in schedules that already reside within apps that most of these families already use. The second step, and perhaps most important, is we level it up to logistics, as I like to say. So we wrap that singular event that's 3 to 4 p.m. game with prep time and travel time and early arrival and carpool drivers and all the additional missing details where the mental load truly lies. And that's kind of our speciality, is to give you a view into time as the way you actually spend it in the real world.
You said at the beginning, known you for like 18 months. It is pretty awesome to watch how tight your pitch has gotten on this. Like that last line of time, how you actually spend it, all the posting you make about time literacy. I think it's super bang on.
Thank you. Yeah, we feel so impassioned by that. The concept that you mentioned, time literacy, is something that we trademarked as a term, borrowing from my kind of banking background, like financial literacy. That's a thing we are taught. We spend time and money trying to figure out, kind of like becoming adept at it. It's the same thing with time. Like we're not born with it. And the more adept we are kind of navigating that space, the earlier and the younger that we get a chance to do that, then the more successful my feeling is that we'll be in life in general, because no one likes being cute. Being late after a while is not being cute. And so young athletes have an unfair advantage of learning that earlier than perhaps others because it's so time boxed and time based in terms of how they lead their lives.
Wow. I'll hit you with one more and then I'll throw to Steven. So you have this cool career in banking. You have this job, I'm sure like well-paying. Tech is super expensive to build. How did this conversation go with your husband when you came home or whenever and were like, I want to go do this thing and make a career shift?
I didn't say that I did want it to. I was like, nope, I'm going to go after chief digital officer roles as I previously have had. This is the thing that I worked super hard to attain in terms of the ego and the status and the title and yes, the paycheck. And you work your entire career to get to that point. And then he was like, yeah, I think you should just leave that. And I'm like, what do you This is everything that I am. He's like, yeah, the thing that we keep talking about in the car, in the car rides over to games and things like the frustration that we feel, and we were kind of really conversational about that pain. He's like, that's a thing. Like, that is tech. That is a solution. That's something that you should go after. I'm like, yeah, okay. Like that's something I'm going to wake up and do on a Tuesday morning. So more and more of those conversations became accretive to kind of paint a clearer picture. Next thing you know, I'm making some phone calls, calling some guys from my previous career, being like, hey, do you want to bootstrap this thing? Do you want to like sign some NDAs? Do you want to design an experience? And I think it was just step by step, brick by brick, literally, because it's not, something that you arrive to unless others have. I didn't. That wasn't my journey. But like every little bit counted. And then all of a sudden the next day rolls into the next. And then you turn on your brain and you're like, whoa, we're like execution mode right now. Like we're actually like, we have a plan, we have a vision, we've got next steps and things. We're meeting about it regularly. Like this feels real. And then it kind of started to snowball from there in all the best ways. But it was definitely a slow start that I resisted, and he very much supported. Yeah.
I totally thought it was the opposite. Like, hey, I want to go do this. And then it's a convincing job, right? Like you got to get your first board member and it's going to be him most likely, right? Especially in a situation like this. But the fact that he pushed you, I think is really awesome and super fun.
I think it was different for us. Like he's entrepreneurially minded. I'm not. I'm a first generation immigrant founder, which means like I need the paycheck. I need safety, soundness, predictability. And like we are here to build a life that my mom had taken me at 10 years old to have. And anything that would disrupt that or bring about risk to it is counterintuitive. And so I think it was more of the support and the prompting of someone other than myself to kind of get over this initial discomfort with it that really prompted it. But it's a unique dynamic between us that allowed those conversations to even occur. And plus a very mature point in my career, this is an important one. Like I've earned that right. I get this question asked all the time, especially from investors, the bros. They're like, so what does your husband do? And I'm like, are you just doing the math, trying to figure out how I bootstrap this thing for 2 years? Because I mean, you'd be right to ask, but it has nothing to do with what the partner does. How supportive is your partner emotionally? Right. How supportive are they physically in the home when you sit here at this desk for 16 hours a day and life just evolves and revolves around you? That's a better framed question. But like, what does your husband do? And then they like figure out, they're like, oh, because my answer is he's in finance. They're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, no. Back it up. There's a whole career that I worked 20 years to be able to pause and say, I'm going to now take this risk. So they're not in the same.
I mean, good on you, right? Because like that is actually the much better question. My follow-up to that though is there a backup plan? Like, are you giving yourself a time box of like, we're going to get this thing, and if it doesn't work by X date, then I'm back to, chief digital officer kind of a thing? Yeah. Or are you all in until it works? Like what's been the setup? Like, is there an agreement there? Because you guys have a lot, speaking of risk, right? You have a lot on the table. You started when you have a family. Like Eric and I both, like I'm married. I'm about to hit that journey, right, of starting a family. Eric's not quite there yet. And so like for us starting a business, and like when I started my business, I was just dating somebody, right? So I didn't have a lot to lose or a lot to risk in terms of other people in that equation. You not only have a partner, but you have kids. So how did that end up kind of getting framed for you? Do you time box it so that you can have like a success constraint and a failure constraint? Or is it more just, no, this is what we're doing, we're going to make it work, and that's it?
No, that's a good question. I think that answer would have evolved and has evolved over time. Had you asked that this time last year, not a whole lot as much confidence would have accompanied that response. I think it was still kind of early days experimental, not getting enough of the signal to say, is this a thing? Having traversed this past year, which was filled with so many twists and turns and so many even more so risk and unknowns that have been added, it's, as I like to say, it's not happening. So you know what I mean? It's like, I'm not turning back. It's definitely not a measure of like, wow, if then, if this, then that. If in 6 months this happens, then certainly something else, cannot be. I think it's milestone based from a growth and business perspective. Absolutely. Those are the most important like traction points and things that we're trying to get to. But in terms of turning back now, I just don't see how that's possible. I am such a rogue corporate employee at this point, who the hell is going to want me? I'm going to come in here, post all over LinkedIn, violate every possible corporate policy when it comes to comms. I'm going to assert opinions. I'm going to be able to, I'm going to expect to make decisions in the way that we're able to, obviously within a startup world. It's why I left, because I didn't have that latitude. I didn't have the ability to affect directly a point of view to an outcome, to a decision and an action. We do that now all day long within minutes. And to undo that mentally and place myself back into an ecosystem or a setting where like that's not even an option, I think that's just abuse. Like, I don't know if I could be that masochistic, financial risk aside.
Yeah.
So a lot of elements come into that, but I think it's more so about what's fulfillment looking like. Why do we wake up every morning? What kind of pain do we want to feel? Is this the type of pain and discomfort, or is the other type of pain? So I'm kind of still very much, and I don't see a foreseeable future where that wouldn't be the type of pain that I choose every day.
I think it makes total sense, and more power to you for even recognizing that. I'm the same way, right? There's no way, like once you taste that freedom, putting that back in a box is not easy or really viable, I think, in a lot of cases. But having all that kind of not out of the way, but answered, right? I'm really interested in your ability, and again, as someone who's like looking to potentially like go into building a family life while I'm also building a business, right? That balance of like work-life balance means something different when there's kids involved, right? Not saying that it's super unique to have a family and run a business, but at the same time, it's fairly unique for most folks to start a business while they're in a family and running one at the same time. I wanted to kind of hear your strategies around how you're balancing that. Like obviously from the logistics standpoint, you're building a tool that helps you do that. But from like an emotional support level, from attention and all of that, like that means a lot, especially at a younger age. And with your oldest now just going to high school, there's a lot of formative years happening at the same time concurrently, while you're also building the formative years of your business. Your brainchild and your actual children are vying for attention. How are you doing that?
Well said, for sure. Actually, there's some stats that back up that more success happens within the 40s era of entrepreneurship, which one would assume already has a family component tied alongside that, partly because of the maturity, partly because there is financial stability or more of that risk opportunity to be taken and or a supportive partner or spouse alongside. So family is definitely a complicating factor, but also one that could perhaps unlock or enable some other challenges as well. And it makes it also less lonely. So I think about, Eric, you're having a bad day. Like, who are you talking to? Do you know what I mean? It's not a co-founding conversation. It is someone who's proximally next to you and in those weeds every single day, and just kind of also pulls you out of it, because I don't have a choice. I stay busy and I'm at the fields and I'm doing these things. I don't get the opportunity or the luxury to just sit there and spin out. I'll do that at 3 a.m. But during the normal course of the day, it's like you're so forcefully busy and you're context switching so many times that it's probably healthy to not just be so maniacally focused on the one thing that probably doesn't even matter, but is completely consuming you for the day. I say I'm birthing a fourth child, physically, time-wise, emotionally, mentally, all of that. And my 3 other kids get to have an observation of that experience. And I mean, like, not gross, but like they're really actively involved. And what I find was most difficult back in my oh so glorious career, it was intangible to them. Like, they didn't understand why mommy's locked up in an office all day and on calls while it's so important and I'm posturing with all these titles and things. They see stickers, they see swag, they see an app. There's an emotional and also physical kind of connection to what is this chapter now that can be better brought, to their understanding than something that was just so cerebral and, ethereal previously. So they're a part of it. They interrupt calls. If they were home today, they would be coming right in here. We would acknowledge them. I have a rule that says if you interrupt, you introduce. So my 7-year-old would be introducing herself to you at this moment. She'll say, hi, I'm Reagan. She'll ask me a question that she needs in right this moment, and she'll just kind of scurry off. So like it just happens and ejects itself in very natural ways, and just have to be okay with it. Previously in corporate, I would have hid under a rock before someone would have come into a call. Like, it's just a different mindset. And so the days are really long. What am I going to tell you? They start really early and they end really late, and you find moments betwixt. It's space between time. I'm at practice. I'm on my, I'm on my phone. I'm engaging on accounts. I'm posting something. I'm commenting. I'm resharing. There's always this involvement. Like, you're there all the time, but you'll do it tactfully and you'll do it in ways that hopefully will allow you to be in two places at the same time. I get flack for this all the time because like my oldest especially like needs the eyes, like she needs to connect. So if I'm like not maintaining, I made a stupid video about this. If I'm not maintaining the proper eye contact ratio to like when she catches my eyes, like I'm in so much trouble after the game. So she'd be like, "You're doing Orgo stuff again." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm sorry." So like I always have to, balance it out. But they get it and they understand and they see their friends using it. So she's just like, "Yeah, you could tag me on that." I'm like, "Oh, okay, I could tag you now. That's good."
Wow.
That's so funny.
Yeah, it's a big honor, trust me. Yeah.
Having people in your actual home to talk to is really cool. To answer your question, just me and my golden retriever is who I have these tough conversations with. So
yeah, he's a great listener.
what advice do you have for somebody who is building a company? They are also a parent. They care about building a great company and being present. They also care a lot about being present with their spouse and their kids.
Yeah, bring them into the journey, obviously. I mean, spouses, it's a non-negotiable. So you have to be already kind of co-signed to this journey and figure out what that right balance, I hate the word balance, but what the right mix of life versus, work and everything else has to be. But the kids one, bring them in as young as, I don't know, 3, 4, whatever makes sense to you. Bring them in, show them some things, let them touch some things, punch on keys, interrupt some calls. Like that humanizes it. And then they excuse it from me. Like they understand now that when mommy's recording or if I'm going to call or whatever all day, this is happening all day long. Like just kind of go do something else. Like they respect it more because they feel that connection to it. So just bring them in. But the flip side of things, I would say personally as well, no one really told me this and I can happily to like write more about it because I'm experiencing it every day. Be prepared to lose friends. You're gonna lose a lot of friends. It's hard enough maintaining adult friendships as a parent and as much as you're seeing people in the sidelines and drop off, etc., but you'll be doing so much less of that you won't be seen. You won't be showing up at, paddle. Like a lot of my friends, they're like retiring and like having fun in the back end of their career. I'm like, bye guys, like I won't see you for like another 6 months. Just be prepared for that. And like, just accept it that that's the JOMO that you're going to have to kind of, embrace because you're doing something else. And that's okay.
That's really good advice. I'm going to try to wrap us up here a little bit because thank you for your time. Obviously, you're super busy. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day and spending time, obviously, in a momentous day in the household with us. But
it's so quiet. It's so nice. You picked a good day. Otherwise, it would have been like, no, it can't happen.
My question was a little bit about that, right? Like, do you build in seasonality into your work schedule? Because summer's got to be really crazy.
Yeah. Oh, Steve, it's so cute. You'll see. There is no seasonality to any of it.
Fair enough.
You will love to embrace Mondays. TGIM. That's where your life is going to be. Friday, there is no Sunday scaries. It's Friday scaries. Thursday scaries. The weekends are brutal. The week itself is 3, 4, 5 stacked deep. I serve 3 dinners. You think I like to cook? I don't. But I have to serve it in various seatings because of the comings and goings. Yes, summer was crazy. We had 6 a.m. practices for long course swim, 6:30 rather. Then there was camps, then there's swim and dive, then there were meets. Like July's a blur. August barely happened. And so I don't know when it's less. It's just always being dialed up and down and across differently. And the biggest adjustment as of this morning, a little bit of the mornings are different and the afternoons are just going to be completely dense. Like there's now a lull where I can like jam pack a bunch of stuff during the day. And then it's going to kind of have a tail where I'm like injecting things, on the tail of things. And then I'm like back on the couch writing my, LinkedIn post at 11:45 p.m. Like it's just that. Mm-hmm. And it's like you have to have, back to advice real quick, I know we're wrapping up, endurance. Have that endurance because you will be switching from one to the other. Have the endurance at the end of the day to just come back full circle and be like, oh shit, I never tested that build that the developer sent through at 7 p.m. So it's just all of that. So endurance, just like be in it and know that it'll be dense and it'll be hard, but that's what you want, right? Like you're signing up for that. So just do that thing.
Thank God it's Monday is like the best quote I've ever heard anybody say. This whole episode was just preparing Steve for fatherhood.
Yes.
So.
Yep, this one has been a personal study for me, so thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh,
Eric's just along for the ride. Speaking of though, I have to ask this question before we head off. Is it true that Eric used to sleep on your couch? Is that a real thing?
No, he had a whole bedroom and a floor. So like, don't even downgrade what happened. Like he crashed and slept over like a king.
I crashed
He rolled
hard.
downstairs. The whole family was like, "What's going on?" I was like, "I was just Eric. Like it's fine."
She made me breakfast. It was like a big deal.
There's a mouth to feed. It's fed. Like Michael gets meals like 3 times a day, like just served meals all day long. That's price of entrepreneurship.
Oh. Well, thank you again for spending time with us today. We really appreciate it. Super fun to talk to you as always. I'm sure I'll have more questions that I'll ask you probably off this pod about what's to come and what to expect and all that fun stuff when it's time. But Eric, great find, great intro.
She's the best. Yeah.
I appreciate you guys. Keep building, keep thriving.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.